Imagine walking into a store. Not a regular store, but a high-end antique gallery in London, and the owner locks the doors behind you, turns off the lights for other customers, and lets you spend 4 hours buying absolutely anything you want. No price tags, no hesitation, just pure unbridled desire.
This one, about this table, this chess set.
It's only 89,000. It's sold, look.
About this one, right? Yeah, that's the sold sign means for me. I put that on the list. Did we get those? Why don't we order those?
You don't have the space for all of this.
Yeah,
Michael.
I do.
You've got space?
Yeah.
But
we
in the
bought
house in
these.
Neverland?
No, this would be for another house.
Oh, for another one?
Yeah.
Okay.
We bought these, right? And these.
You like your own, don't you?
Yeah. And these, this table, these, right? These.
Yes. Oh, that's only 275,000 each. That's $500,000 for those two.
That was a Tuesday for Michael Jackson. In 1996, during one of his most documented luxury shopping sprees in London's West End, Michael and a small entourage swept through galleries and antique shops on New Bond Street, spending an estimated $4 million in a single afternoon on furniture, sculptures, and rare artifacts, pieces that most billionaires would spend weeks deliberating over. He pointed, staff wrapped. He moved on. One shop owner recalled watching Michael cradle a $300,000 gilded French armchair the way most people hold a puppy. And the wild part? That shopping spree doesn't even crack the top 5 on this list. Michael Jackson wasn't just famous. He was the most famous human being who ever walked the earth. At his commercial peak in the 1980s, his music was in every country. His face was on every magazine, and his moves were being imitated in every school playground, from Lagos to Los Angeles. But with that kind of fame came something darker and stranger, a complete inability to live a normal life. Michael couldn't walk into a grocery store. He couldn't sit in a park. He couldn't eat at a restaurant without sparking a riot. So instead, he turned inward. He built worlds. He collected objects. He bought experiences and possessions that ordinary life could never offer him. And he did it with a checkbook that had very few limits and a mind that had absolutely none. What followed was one of the most extraordinary and surreal accumulations of wealth, art, fantasy, and extravagance in human history. This is the top 10 most expensive things Michael Jackson ever owned. And by the time we get to number 1, you're going to understand something about Michael that most people never did. Coming in at number 10 is Michael's custom-built, one-of-a-kind gaming arcade at Neverland Ranch, a collection that, by conservative estimates, was worth over $1 million when fully assembled. But this wasn't just a couple of pinball machines in a basement. Michael had an entire commercial-grade arcade built inside Neverland's entertainment complex, featuring over 100 full-size arcade cabinets, including rare prototype machines that never made it to public release, custom-branded games with his own likeness, and vintage classics from the 1970s and 80s that he'd had fully restored. He reportedly spent hundreds of thousands having several machines custom-engineered exclusively for him. When Neverland's contents were auctioned in 2009 by Julian's Auctions, the arcade equipment drew massive interest from collectors worldwide. This was a man who never had a childhood. The Jackson 5 were rehearsing 6 hours a day while other kids were playing, and so Michael, with the resources of a global superstar, simply built himself the childhood he never got. Every game, every token, every blinking light was a small act of reclamation. At number 9, we have Michael's extraordinary art collection, a treasure trove of paintings, sculptures, and rare works that he assembled over 2 decades and valued at approximately $50 to $70 million at the time of his death. Michael was a deeply serious collector, not a casual buyer. He owned works by Norman Rockwell, including the painting Saying Grace, which he kept at Neverland and which later sold for over $46 million at auction in 2013, making it one of the most expensive Rockwell works ever sold. He owned pieces by Fritz Scholder, original Disney animation cells signed by Walt Disney himself, and a substantial collection of pre-Raphaelite paintings that he was known to sit with for hours in quiet contemplation. Friends who visited Neverland described him walking through his gallery the way a professor walks through a library, with reverence, with familiarity, with an intimacy that suggested these weren't just objects, but companions. For a man who trusted very few people, great art never betrayed him. Number 8 brings us to something that redefined what it means to be a power move in the music industry. Michael Jackson's purchase of the ATV music publishing catalog in 1985 for $47.5 million. A catalog that included the publishing rights to over 250 Beatles songs. Paul McCartney had actually tipped Michael off about the catalog being for sale during a friendly collaboration period, reportedly telling him that music publishing was the smartest investment in the business. What Paul probably didn't anticipate was that Michael would take that advice, outbid him for the catalog, and then sit across from him at dinner parties for the next decade.
Funny story to me, though, business-wise, and I want to get to the new single and all that. I know that's what we're here to talk about. But the fact of the matter is, you were the guy who said to Michael Jackson, you should get into publishing.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Don't you love the irony?
And he bought all your songs.
Yeah.
And you've said to him, listen, I'll give you fair market value. Let me buy my songs. I want to own them. And he won't do it.
No.
And now that he has sort of...
Scumbag.
He's sort of using them as leverage for his own financial problems.
You know, it's a funny thing. We had quite a good little relationship. He rang me up one Christmas Day, I think it was, and I heard this. Hello?
He's very weird.
Oh.
Yeah.
I said, hello, is this? I thought, uh-oh, wait a minute, this American fan's got my home phone number.
Right.
This is weird. I said, hello, yes.
Yeah,
no, he's not here.
Yeah.
So, hi, Paul. So, anyway, he came over. I said, what do you want to do? He said, make some hits. I said, well, that sounds good. So we got a little relationship there. It was quite good fun. And it is true, he did ask me, he said, got some advice, Paul?
Yeah.
I took him aside and said, diddle-a-diddle, and think about getting into music publishing. And I thought he was joking. He said, oh, I'm going to get yours. Well, I went, oh, he slapped
Sure
him
you
on
are.
the back. Right. Good one, I thought that was a joke. And then I just got rung up. He said, he's got yours. Oh. And I thought, hey, you know what is weird? I don't mind that because he had all the cash. Someone was selling it and he bought it. What I don't like is that I've actually written to him a couple of times. We're dishing the dirt. Howard, you got me at it.
Go ahead, yes.
I don't normally
You wrote him a couple of letters.
Wrote him a couple of letters saying, Michael, don't you think after, even if I was just a writer on the payroll, after 30 years of being reasonably successful for this company you now own, don't you think I could have a raise?
Yeah.
And, he said, oh, well, that's just business. I said, yeah.
Yeah.
And we've never talked about it. He won't even answer my letters.
Oh, my
so, you
God.
know what? If we haven't got that great a relationship.
Not anymore, huh?
That pisses
but
me
I did
off.
read
I met
recently-
him once, and I thought he was the oddest human being I ever.
By the time Michael merged ATV with Sony Music Publishing in 1995 to form Sony/ATV, the combined catalog was worth over $1 billion. Michael's stake alone, estimated at around 50%, was valued between $750 million and $1 billion at the time of his death. The Beatles catalog was the financial spine of his estate, and it was the shrewdest business move any recording artist had ever made. Paul McCartney called it painful. Michael called it business. At number 7, we step into the world of fashion, specifically the iconic red and black leather jacket Michael wore in the 1983 Thriller music video, designed by legendary costume designer Deborah Nadoolman Landis. This single garment became the most recognizable piece of clothing in pop culture history. The original jacket sold at auction in 2011 for $1.8 million, making it the most expensive music memorabilia jacket ever auctioned at that time. But what makes it truly priceless is what it represented. A visual identity so powerful that 40 years later, Halloween stores still stock replicas by the millions. The jacket wasn't just clothing, it was armor. It was the uniform of a man transforming himself from a child star into a global icon, frame by frame, across a 14-minute short film that permanently changed what music videos could be. Michael reportedly wept watching the final cut of Thriller, not from sadness, but from the recognition that something truly historic had been created. He was right.
Thriller, of all the songs on the album, seems like you can do much more movie-wise, than any of the songs because of the story and all the visuals and monsters and stuff. And so I came up with an idea of thinking that I really want to change, metamorphosis into some other creature. I said, great, that's who we got to get. So I said, get in touch with. And I wanted Thriller and Beat It to be a stimulant for people to make better videos or short films. I really did. Because, I mean, I love MTV watching it. You know, I think it's great. But a lot of stuff I see I'm not so crazy about.
Number 6 on our list is Neverland Ranch itself, the 2,700-acre estate in Los Olivos, California, that Michael purchased in 1988 for $19.5 million, and then poured an estimated $35 million in renovations into over the following years. By the mid-1990s, Neverland had its own amusement park, with a Ferris wheel, roller coaster, and carousel. It had a private zoo housing giraffes, orangutans, elephants, a Bengal tiger named Thriller, and the famous chimpanzee Bubbles. It had a movie theater that seated over 50 people, a fire station, a train station with a functioning steam train, a 4-acre lake, and a flower clock large enough to be seen from the air. The total value of the property and its contents was estimated at over $100 million at its peak. Neverland was Michael's attempt to build Peter Pan's Neverland into physical reality, a place where childhood never ended and the outside world couldn't reach him. The irony was devastating. The world eventually reached him anyway, and in 2008, after the legal and financial pressure became unbearable, Michael left Neverland forever, never to return. He called it just a house after that. He never called it home again. At number 5, we have Michael's fleet of luxury vehicles, a collection that included custom-built limousines, exotic sports cars, and heavily modified SUVs, worth a combined estimated $4.5 million. The crown jewel was arguably his 1999 Mercedes-Benz CL-KG-TR, one of only 26 ever built, and valued at approximately $1.5 million at the time of purchase. He also owned a Rolls-Royce Phantom, a custom-stretched Mercedes limousine with gold interior fixtures, and a heavily armored Cadillac Escalade motorcade vehicle. But the most fascinating vehicle in his collection was arguably his custom golf cart, a fully enclosed, climate-controlled cart that was essentially a miniature luxury cabin on wheels, used to ferry him around Neverland without ever having to step outside. For a man who couldn't travel anywhere without triggering mass hysteria, his vehicles were less about transportation and more about controlled environments, sealed worlds he could move through without exposure. Coming in at number 4 is something that many people don't know existed: Michael's private crown jewels collection, a curated assembly of diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and custom-designed pieces worth an estimated $10 to $15 million. Michael wore jewelry the way ancient kings did, as declarations of power and identity. His most famous piece was a custom diamond-studded glove worn during the 1984 Victory Tour that sold at auction in 2009 for $190,000. He owned a 70-carat diamond necklace commissioned from a Swiss jeweler, custom-designed ruby cufflinks from Cartier, and multiple pieces from the royal collection of a Middle Eastern monarch gifted to him during his tours through the Gulf states in the late 1990s. What was remarkable about his jewelry wasn't just the monetary value, but the emotional weight he attached to each piece. Staff at Neverland reported that Michael would sometimes sit alone in his private quarters, laying out his jewelry collection across a velvet table, the way a general might study a battle map, quietly, deliberately, as if each stone was a memory he was trying to keep hold of. At number 3 is the most lavish single home purchase of his career outside of Neverland, the Carrollwood Estate in the Holmby Hills neighborhood of Los Angeles, which Michael leased for $100,000 per month beginning in late 2008, a property that, had he purchased it, was valued at over $35 million. The Carrollwood mansion was where Michael spent the final months of his life, and it became the staging ground for his This Is It comeback rehearsals. The house featured 9 bedrooms, a cinema, a wine cellar, a pool house, and a personal medical suite that was tragically, ultimately, the center of the investigation into his death. The property's owner, Ron Burkle, had the estate fully furnished and staffed to Michael's precise specifications, down to the Egyptian cotton thread count of the bedsheets and the temperature settings of each individual room. Even in financial difficulty, Michael Jackson lived the way a reigning monarch would. He simply could not conceive of living any other way. At number 2, we arrive at the most staggering financial structure Michael Jackson ever built, and the one that almost no one talks about when they discuss his wealth. His $500 million debt portfolio and the Mijak music catalog, which contained the publishing rights to every song Michael Jackson ever wrote or co-wrote, valued at an estimated $250 to $300 million on its own. Mijak was Michael's personal publishing company, established in 1980, and it held the rights to classics like Billie Jean, Beat It, Man in the Mirror, Black or White, and over 1,000 other compositions. Unlike the ATV catalog, which held other people's songs, Mijak was his DNA. It was every melody he ever hummed into existence, every lyric he ever bled onto a page. When Michael died in 2009, his estate was carrying roughly $500 million in debt, loans taken against the value of his music catalogs. And yet, within 7 years, his estate had not only cleared that debt, but turned a profit exceeding $2 billion in post-death earnings. The Mijak catalog was the engine of that resurrection. In 2023, Sony Music acquired a majority stake in Mijak for a reported $600 million, meaning the songs Michael wrote in his bedroom, in recording studios, on napkins backstage during world tours, were ultimately worth more than the GDP of several small nations. He didn't just write hits, he wrote assets. And at number 1, the single most valuable thing Michael Jackson ever owned, the one that no auction house could ever catalog, no estate lawyer could ever fully price, and no rival could ever take from him, was his own image, his likeness, the Michael Jackson brand itself. In 2009, Forbes estimated that Michael Jackson's post-death earnings would reach $1 billion within a decade. They were wrong. By 2018, his estate had generated over $2 billion since his passing, making him the highest-earning deceased celebrity in history, a record he has held every single year since his death. The This Is It concert film grossed over $260 million worldwide from a movie made entirely from rehearsal footage. The Cirque du Soleil show, Michael Jackson 1, ran for over a decade in Las Vegas. His music streams billions of times annually across every platform on Earth. The 2025 biopic, simply titled Michael, a film his own estate sanctioned and helped produce, has reignited global fascination all over again, introducing him to an entirely new generation who wasn't even alive when Thriller dropped. What Michael Jackson owned at number 1 wasn't a property or a catalog or a jewel. It was the most powerful personal brand the entertainment world has ever produced, built on talent so singular, ambition so relentless, and a hunger for perfection so consuming that it ultimately cost him everything. A boy from Gary, Indiana, who just wanted to dance, who ended up owning the world, and whose name, decades after his last breath, still makes the whole world stop and listen. So now the question comes to you. Was Michael Jackson simply a superstar, or was he a global empire disguised as an artist? Make sure to like, subscribe, and continue watching Black Elites. I'll see you in the next one.
And cut. That's a wrap. Okay.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap.